Okay, so why don't you tell me how long have you been playing League for?
Playing since season 4.
Season four. All right, cool. And what is your goal? Do you have like a goal rank that you want to get to, or just
Um,
improve in general?
Gold.
Okay, so gold. Gold is your goal.
Yeah.
What would you say your biggest problems are in League? What are your biggest issues?
Um,
What do you have the most trouble with?
Team fighting, I guess.
Okay, team fights. Got it. Um, and is there anything particularly tough in laning phase that you run into in the bot lane?
Not normally.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, let's go through your OPGG. I see your bronze two, and you've got a pretty small amount of total games played in ranked, and I see you've got like tons and tons of normal games played. Is there a reason why you like normals over ranked?
I like messing around.
Okay, yeah, I've noticed that you've got a lot of different champions played, um, which is fine. I mean, when you're that's what normals are for, is just to kind of mess around, play some ARAMs and whatever. I think one of the few things that I have noticed, even in your normal games, are especially on the 80 carries, like some of your CS numbers are really low. Like if we look at this Ash game you lost, so it's probably not a great example. You're probably not in lane very often, but 91 CS at 20 minutes. This game with Lucian, 193 at 34. These typically are really, even though you kind of looks like you carried that game, it's still a really, really low amount of CS. I think the number one focus that you should have in these games is CS. It's what's going to win you games, especially in ranked as you climb. In bronze, really anything will work, right? I mean, if you if you want to play
Yeah.
AD Soraka, right, AD carry, it'll work, right? If you're good enough, because it's bronze and everyone just throws and makes terrible mistakes. But what I want to do with you today is trying to get your fundamentals in order so that once you start working on them from kind of today forward, um, they'll apply to not only your bronze games but your silver games too, and your gold games, right? And into platinum and diamond if you ever wanted to get that high, right? So um, as long as we can build that foundation and get those like basics under control, you'll be out of bronze in a week. Okay, it should not be a problem for you. And I've seen some of the games, especially some of your Jin games. You've got some pretty decent stats. So um, we'll try and get like I'll try and leave you with a few like specific things for you to work on today in your games. That'll help you moving forward. So number one thing that I noticed in your OPGG is you play a lot of normals and not a lot of ranked. So I would say play more ranked games if you're trying to get better. Okay. Normal games, I mean, you go there to just mess around, but so do all the other players. So this 32 9 and 8 game isn't really going to be indicative of how a ranked game will ever go because no one's really try harding, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say what you want to do is start spamming ranked game because I mean think about it, like bronze 2 and bronze 5 are very little difference. Like as you try and improve your game and work on some of the things we talk about, like this trading stance and retaliation trade, these are two really big concepts in League. They it's going to take a few games for you to get used to it and understand them, and you might lose a few games. But in the end, it's going to be worth it because you might drop down to bronze 3 or bronze 4, but it'll slingshot you right back up to silver, 1, 2, 3. So don't be afraid to lose in ranked, is what I'm trying to say, or afraid to play ranked games because it really the more you play. The kind of easier and more comfortable you become in that environment. a suggestion I would have for you is to start a Smurf account if you really care that much, and just something that you can mess around in your Smurf account, just playing ranked. That way you don't have to play normals at all ever again. You can play your serious game on your main Silentt account, and then like have a Silentt 2 where your mess around is still in ranked, but you don't care whether you're, bronze 5 or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be my first suggestion. Let's see. And then number 3, I think my third suggestion, first is CS, second is play more ranked, less normals, to get just an idea of how kind of good you are with where you're at in terms of your AD carry play, or really any play in general, because it's hard for me to give a good recommendation when normal games kind of skew reality a little bit in terms of just kind of competitive play. So like if you want to become a gold, you've got to kind of show yourself what mistakes you're making, and the best way to do that is just play that through ranked. So number 1 CS, number 2 ranked, and then number 3, try and limit your champion pool. So if we're gonna play, if we're talking about playing in the bot lane, I would say ADCs. So you want a Lucian, which is not a bad pick, and Jhin, which is a kind of it's like a very, and I'm sure you know this, but it's a very unique style of AD carry. It's not something that if you're good at Jhin, you'll be good at all the AD carries. Kind of the same way if you would say be like a Caitlyn. Caitlyn's mechanics are relatively straightforward, so if you're good at Caitlyn, you could still be good at Jinx, and you could still be good at Ashe. So I would say if you wanted some variety in the AD carry, pick these 5, Lucian, Jhin, Caitlyn, Jinx, Ashe, and just rotate through them in ranked. And try not to have such a wide champion pool, because it's really, really difficult to get good at a champ if you're only playing that champ once every 5 to 10 games, right? I mean, I can see you've got sporadic Jhin games, but like I see Azir, Varus, Yasuo, Nasus, Ezreal. Like you can see all of these different champs. It's really hard to get good at any one of them if you're not focusing on it, right? So think about how different of a play style Singed is than Jhin, right? Like you're playing a tank, a very unique tank that has a very unique skill set, and then the very next game you're playing an AD carry that's very unique as well, and it's all about spacing, and then you're playing a jungler that's Evelynn, and then it's just, do you know what I mean? Do you see where I'm getting with this? It's like,
Yeah.
when you're changing your play style so much game to game, it becomes really difficult to focus on getting better, or just really understanding what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It just looks like you're just kind of playing to have fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to improve, these are the tips that I'm trying to help you, get better, is just focus on a small pool. And even 5 is like on the top end. Typically when I want to get better, I'll just play 3 champs for each role, right? Typically the standard thought process is pick 3 champs for each role and just spam them over and over and over for whatever role you get. But since you want to focus on AD carries, my suggestion would be to pick these 5 champs and then see what your team needs in each scenario, and then pick accordingly. And then the more you just spam these 5, the better and the faster you'll get better at these champs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions so far?
No.
Nothing. Okay. Okay. And so, by the way, when you do learn these new champs, there's tons of online resources that will kind of get you to the most basic stuff out of the way that you don't have to ever think about again, like runes and masteries, for instance. Do you visit OPGG at all ever?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the statistics page, have you ever spent a lot of time here?
Nah.
Okay, so this is a fantastic resource that not a lot of players know about. Um, I'll just give you a real quick overview. The statistics portion gives you information like, okay, you're in bronze. You want to know, sort by win rate in bronze in the last month. Who's got the highest win rate, right? If you're sitting in queue and you don't know who to ban, I would look at these statistics and you can see the number 1 win rate is Scion right now. The number 2 is Amumu, and so on and so forth. That should be your number 1 criteria is win rate. And you can see almost every champ has a losing win rate, which is kind of sad. But there's 5 champs in bronze that actually have winning win rates, and these are the 5. The next stat you want to look at is games played. So Scion, even though he's got the highest win rate, he's only got 18,857 games played in the last month, whereas Sona has a similar win rate but has almost 5 times more games played. So if I'm sitting in queue and thinking about someone who to ban, Sona would be my number 1. So like these kind of statistics are very helpful, and as you kind of go up, like in Plat you can see how many positive win rate champs there are. I mean, look at that, 76 champions with over 50% win rate. So that's kind of the compare and contrast. I'm sure you probably didn't need to know that because you already did. But here's another very helpful thing from this section, and the reason I brought it up was, say we're looking for Lucian. You can click on his name. What it'll do is it'll kind of bring up the statistics for Lucian. Every statistic almost you can possibly imagine. What's the most popular skill order? QEW, and it's picked 43.7% of the time. It's got a 56% win rate. Which summoner spells should I take? Exhaust or heal? There's been like 55 games played with Exhaust, which makes no sense. Someone playing Lucian support, and then there's 46,000. The rest of them played just Exhaust. So you can see it's all very self-explanatory. But the thing is, like, if you don't play a lot of Jinx, you don't play a lot of Ashe, you don't play a lot of Caitlyn, you can just go straight to their statistics page here. And it'll give you kind of a breakdown of, okay, what should I start with? What are my core items? Lucian's got Yumu, Black Cleaver, and then from there it's kind of up to you. You can do, Maw, you can do Last Whisper, Phantom Dancer, and then the Fire Cannon. And it depends on, obviously, what your team needs. But you can see Fire Cannon and Phantom Dancer are the 2 most played options. So again, just kind of scroll through, and if you want to build your mastery tree, build your rune page around what's here, all of these statistics are sourced by OPG. G uses data from ranked games, platinum or higher. So these players all kind of know what they're doing. So without you having to put too much thought into it, especially before you even get to gold and have to even think about the stuff, I would say my first stop before even starting a queue is going into your OPGG statistics page for the champions that you play. Make sure that your runes and your masteries are correct and where they should be, and they're not kind of out of whack. Like you're not taking AP quints instead of attack speed quints. You know what I mean? Like, just make sure those baseline things are in order, and this is a good place to do that. All right, sound good?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about before the game begins. It's kind of like your pre-game breakdown. What I want to talk about next is kind of the laning phase. And we'll kind of go into our 4 main points here. Trading stance and retaliation, trade and lane control. These 3 are going to be your main points for the laning phase itself. And oops. Okay, so before we talk about the trading stance. When you're in loading screen, when you're in any game that you play, you've got, let's call it like, 1 minute to 90 seconds of just sitting there staring at your screen. If you're not watching a YouTube video or jerking off or whatever you want to do, I would say like you want to spend that time thinking about your lane and thinking about the win conditions that you need, and how exactly you're going to play that lane out, right? So what would you do if you're playing Jhin against an Ezreal Janna lane? And you had Alistar as your support. Like, do you think about that stuff at all before the game begins?
No.
Yeah, so think about, what your AD carry does, what his abilities are. I mean, you know them because you've played them, but you'll probably know your opponents too because you've played with them as well. From time to time, I'm sure you've played enough Ezreal AD carries that you know exactly what each of his abilities do. And then think about, okay, where are Ezreal's strengths? Okay, is Ezreal, you tell me, is Ezreal an early game bully or kind of more of a late game beast?
Would say
What do you think?
don't know.
Okay, no problem. I mean, listen, like some of these things you might not know, no big deal. Ezreal is known for having a super weak early game. So from levels 1 to 6, he can be bullied really easily. So his main focus will be just to farm up and not die. Conversely, on the other side, Caitlyn, for example, with her super long range, she might not have a lot of damage, but she can poke you longer than anybody else. When her range is 650 and your Vayne's range is 550, there's almost no counterplay to that, right? Because she can walk up and auto you in the face and you can't really do anything back, right? Because she can kite backwards, and while she's still hitting you in the face. So there's very little counterplay. It's hard to do. So Caitlyn is thought of as a lane bully early game, right? Because she can kick your ass from level 1, and there's not much you can do about it. Whereas Ezreal does little damage. His range is super short, and he doesn't kind of ramp up his damage until later because he doesn't build a BF sword or anything right away. So you want to kind of think about those kind of champions in that way before the games begin. So another champ in that regard would be like a Kog'Maw, right? Kog'Maw is not a super early game dominant champion. So think about kind of who you're up against as an AD carry, as a 1v1, like you're playing Jhin against Ezreal, you should be playing against, if you're against an Ezreal, you should be thinking, okay, good, licking your chops, I'm going to go in there and kick his ass. If you're playing against the Caitlyn, you think, okay, this might be more of a defensive style, let me farm up and get strong, and then I can fight her when I've got an item advantage, or I have a jungler coming. Secondarily, you want to think about the supports. If you're playing a Jhin, what's Jin's kind of Achilles heel is its mobility. He's not exactly the fastest champ in the game. He's got no escapes, no dashes, anything like that. So any kind of all-in supports, right? If you're playing against the Leona, if you're playing against Alistar, you got to be careful, and you cannot be, or a Thresh, you can't be super aggressive. You've got to think about playing a little bit more safe. And I don't want to, talk too much about the support you're playing with, because in bronze and silver, it's not going to be like they're going to be helping you all that much. It's just kind of try not to die with them or count on them to do anything for you. You need to count on yourself to kind of carry the game. So that's kind of the pre-game into the loading screen. I think you need to start thinking more about what do you need to do not only from a strategy point of view, but also an itemization point of view. Like, what kind of items are you going to rush, right? Do you need to rush a Mauve Malmortius, right? Are they going to have tons of AP on their team? Or do you need to rush a Last Whisper because they've got tons and tons and tons of tanks and tankiness? They've got an Amumu jungle and a Scion top lane and Braum support. Like, it's going to be a very tanky team. You might want to rush that third item, Last Whisper, instead of the fourth or fifth item. And if you're thinking about that before the game starts, you're already ahead of the competition, because a lot of these other players aren't thinking in that way. And the more you kind of get used to that, like, I want to get you thinking on a gold level now, so that as you play these bronze games out, it kind of elevates you to that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have any questions so far about anything we've talked about?
No.
Okay. Okay, do you know how many creeps it takes to get to level 2 in the bot lane?
No.
Okay, so there's 9 creeps. 9 creeps it takes to reach level 2. What is happening? There we go. So I'm just going to write it out. So 9 creeps. This is like a 2-year-old wrote this, but that's fine. 9 creeps gets you to level 2. This is an important statistic to remember always, because you need to be aware. Okay, so 9 creeps is 1 full wave of 6, right? And then the first 3 creeps from the next incoming waves. So that's once the first wave is dead and you've been kind of trading and doing whatever you're doing with the opponents, the next creep wave that comes in, you have to watch closely not only your creeps, but you need to watch your opponent's creeps as well. Because when you're in lane, if you see that his 3 creeps are going to die before your 3 creeps, then they're going to hit level 2 before you, and they can all in you level 2 depending on who they're playing and who you're playing. But typically, like if it's a Thresh, you'll see flash flays into a hook. Have you ever seen that before? Like as soon as level 2 hits? I'm sure you have. I mean, it's pretty common. So that's why it's really, really important to know this number here, because if you can anticipate, okay, I see this next wave coming in, but I'm playing against Caitlyn Thresh, so she's kind of bullying me off the wave, and I know that she's going to hit level 2 with Thresh before me. You can start going from standing back here and trying to, like, say this is the creep wave, and you're trying to kind of CS from a distance. I would say as soon as you see and this is wave number 2, as soon as you see the first 2 creeps go down, now that you know that it's 9 creeps, you know as soon as this creep dies, they're going to go all in, and you're going to see a flash into you with the flay and a hook. So as soon as those 2 creeps die, you just move backwards. That's it. And that'll never happen to you ever again, right? Because as soon as they hit that creep and they hit level 2, you're out of range for them to hard engage you, and then you just stand back until you kill 1, 2, 3 creeps. Then you hit level 2, your support hits level 2, and then you walk right back to lane. That's it. Okay? So it's really important. And on the flip side as well, when you're playing that Ezreal and you see that you're about to hit the 3rd creep before he is, then, and the reason I don't want to focus on that portion too much is it requires some coordination with your support. You can ping it as soon as this creep is getting low. You can just ping like the AD carry and tell your support, just all in him as soon as I kill this creep, right? You don't have to tell him all that. Just say, once you're about to kill the creep, just start pinging the AD carry 3-4 times, kill the creep, you'll both hit level 2, and then you can all in them. But I would not suggest that in bronze, only because it requires a little bit of coordination and trust in your support. And I don't know if you trust your supports in bronze, but from what I've seen, you probably shouldn't. But it is good to know, because then you can avoid getting all in at level 2, and it's called the level 2 cheese. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Okay, so let's see. We've gotten through about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So let me move on to the kind of meat and potatoes here. So, one thing I want to talk about, and this is, hopefully we can get through all four of these today because these are all like very, like the core, the trading stance and retaliation trades are two of the most core fundamentals of League of Legends. If you can master these two, you'll get to platinum. And that's not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. So many players that I play against in platinum are completely oblivious to trading stance and retaliation trades. So let me explain a little bit of kind of what I'm talking about here. Let's get a little bit of a blank slate. Okay, so trading stance is basically autoing the enemy AD carry when they go in to take a creep. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out, so the X's are creeps, okay, and this is, let's do it like this. Let me open another instance of Paint. Okay. All right, so let's do it like this. All right, so we're on Summoner's Rift, okay? All right, so what I'm gonna do is, can you see this okay?
Yeah.
All right, how about this? Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to do is this. This is level 1, okay? And this is you. And then this is me. And we're going to have our creep wave here. Those are our melee minions. Here's our casters. And then I'm going to give myself some melees. And I'm going to give myself some casters. All right, so this is going to be you and your support. And this will be me and my support. Okay? So we're sitting here and we're about to start farming, essentially. Okay? So a couple of things that you have to that you have to keep in mind, and this is something that you need to train your brain to start thinking about at all times, at all points of the game, not just right in the laning phase, is the auto attack and ability arc of the opponent champion, right? So as a Caitlyn, this is my arc, right? I can auto attack anything that comes into that range, right? If I'm playing Vayne, my arc is smaller, okay? If I'm playing Lucian, my arc's a little bigger than Vayne's, but not quite as much as Caitlyn. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I step into Caitlyn's range, right, just to get this creep here, she can auto me, but I can't auto her back. So what's the solution to this problem is, we're playing in Caitlyn's range, to never get into this range, right? Is to just always stay on the outskirts of her range, right? So you're going to be dancing back and forth on the outskirts of her range. If she moves forward to auto you, that means her arc also moves forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is move backwards, okay? So all you're doing is, this is called spacing. This is simply called spacing. So I'm sorry if my voice keeps going in and out. I keep moving away from my mic. So all you're trying to do is play the spacing game, okay? So what a trading stance, and this is kind of the core to trading stance, is you're aware of the opponent's arc and you're standing just on the edge of that arc, okay? So you want to stand just on that edge and keep CSing while in a completely safe zone, okay? Now, Again, if he moves forward, you move backwards. And if he moves back, then you can also mirror his movements, okay? So be always, always, always mirroring his movements and keeping that spacing between you perfect at all times. And the reason why we do this is because if you are standing just on the edge of his auto attack range, as soon as they go and you want to keep an eye on your CS, not just his, because you're looking at his CS and health levels, and as soon as the health of his creeps get down to a single auto attack, then you obviously last hit. But one thing a lot of players in bronze and silver and gold don't understand are you want to look at your own CS's health levels as well, because you'll know that, they're looking at your creeps because you're looking at his, right, for last hitting purposes. If you see one of your creeps getting low, the 80 carry now has an option, okay? What are the options that the 80 carry has? The 80 carry can move forward to try and attack you, therefore missing the creep that they could last hit, or their option is to last hit the 80 carry, is to last hit the creep and not attack you. So what this creates is a window, a very small window of opportunity, where when they are auto attacking your creep as a last hit, during that animation, you are invulnerable completely, right? Because they can't attack you and the creep at the same exact time. So what you're doing is you're watching the creeps on your side and waiting for one that's last hittable, and then you're standing right on the edge of his auto attack range and you're waiting. And you're waiting like a little punk, right? Because as soon as he goes and starts his auto attack animation on the creep, you go right into his range. Okay, it doesn't take very far to step in, but you step in just as far as you need to get into your auto attack range, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you pop him in the face one time while he can't retaliate because he's already trying to last hit. Then you pop right back out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's called a retaliation trade. That's called the trading stance. What you're doing is you're CSing and last hitting, and while you're doing that, you're staying out of his arc range. And trust me, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, no one's thinking on this level. So the more you can train your brain to think on this level, the faster you'll climb out of bronze. I promise you 100%. Because think about this as free damage, completely free damage. Because what you're doing is, as soon as they go for a last hit, they can't simultaneously attack you, which means you get free damage onto them. Think about that. You get one free auto attack for every last hit that he gets. By the time the first wave is gone, you will have roughly full health and he will have roughly half health, right? Because you've autoed him 6 times without any retaliation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the crux of the laning phase, okay? It's you constantly being aware of the trading stance and being able to effectively stay right on the outskirts of his range and then popping in and then popping out again. Popping in, popping out, popping in, popping out. Same thing over and over and over again. You watch LCS, you watch high elo players, streams, anything. Start to try and notice that. Notice each and every one of those creeps that are about to die and the position each one of those players are taking. Because at that level, it's very interesting to see because they both understand this concept. They both know, okay, if I go for this creep, he's going to go for me. So they kind of dance around each other where, like, if you start to move towards him to hit him while he last hits, he's going to move actually this way. And this is how you counter it, is you move away from him and keep that distance so that you can get the last hit without having to take any damage. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is it's a lot to take in. It's pretty complicated, and it's going to take a little while for you to implement correctly and perfectly. I actively work on this myself all the time, and it's going to be, it's just like learning how to last hit. It's just something that you need to do repetitively to get better at. So the times that you can go to the arc, the times that you want to stand on the edge here, is when you have an equal amount or a greater amount of minions on your side, okay? If, for instance, this is the third wave, right, and he's been bullying you and he's got, he's got 10 minions and you've got 6, you can't go to this arc and then pop in and pop out, because what's going to happen is you're going to pop in, hit him in the face, and then draw aggro from 8 creeps, and then you're going to take the equivalent of 1.5 autos, and the trade's actually not going to be worth it. So when you've got a creep disadvantage, you don't want to be trading, but when you have an equal or greater amount of creeps, you do want to be standing on this arc at all times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And similarly, another kind of caveat I want to say is that when you have a health disadvantage, if you are lower than him, say half health versus his 60% health, you also do not want to risk standing on the edge of that arc as well, because he can just decide to say, fuck the minion, I'm just going to all in this guy. So 2 relatively straightforward points, but I just wanted to kind of get that out there. So step 1 is the actual trade, right? Step 1 is standing here, going in for the trade while he CS's. Step 2, the retreat, okay? Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is once you get that hit on this on the enemy AD carry, and this will work 100% through bronze and low silver, is take stock into what this guy does after you attack him that first time. So you step into his range and you auto him 1 time. Okay, what does he do? Does he just keep attacking your creeps? Okay, I'm just going to keep attacking you then, right? And eventually you get to that point where you can just all in him. And even if he decides, okay, I'm going to turn back onto you, you've already gotten 3 or 4 autos onto him for free. You're going to win that all in every single time. So when you go in for the trade in step 1, get that first auto attack off. That's the trade portion. Step 2 is the retreat portion. And before you retreat, try and figure out whether he's all-inable. Can you go in, and is this guy completely oblivious to what's happening to him? Or does he start to walk backwards and retreat? Then you can go back right back out of your range as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's just the trading stance in general. That's just complete overview of how that works. I want you to start going into every single game, not only in AD carry, but if you're playing mid lane, if you're playing top lane, jungle doesn't matter as much. But if you're playing a lane role, this applies to everything, okay? And it is vitally important that you start thinking in these terms of where are my creeps' health at, where is his creeps' health at, and where is the lane opponents in relation. And this is called the micro game of bot, and it's really complicated, and it can completely engulf your thinking at first. But it's good. It's good because at the beginning of learning how to play this game correctly, everything is hard, but it gets easier with time, and the more effort you put in, the better you'll get, and the faster you'll get better. So I encourage you to really start thinking about this as soon as possible. The next thing I want to talk about is called a retaliation trade. Okay, so most people, when their supports get engaged upon, say your Morgana is trying to be a badass and like standing right by his creep line. Usually when they get engaged upon, people start attacking like their enemy support. So the enemy support all ins. Your support, their AD carry also goes in on your support. Most people will either just run away and be like, fuck that guy, he's dead, or they'll start just attacking the closest one to him, which is typically their support. Okay? In a retaliation trade, basically the same logic applies in the trading stance, where if their support and their AD carry start to attack your support, that means they're blowing cooldowns and they're autoing and trying to kill this guy, which means they can't do anything to you. You're completely free and clear, the same way that their animations are kind of going towards your support. You're free to all in their AD carry. So every time your support gets all in, your main focus should always, always, always be their AD carry. Okay, even if their support is standing like right in front of you and their AD carry is back here, well, in that case, just absolutely dumpster the support. But if their support is, here, just in front of their AD carry, and then, your support is in this brush as well, and you're back here, excuse me, if you're back here, do not attack the support. Always attack the damage dealer and the AD carry. Feel free to walk right past their support to do it, because they can't focus you and your support at the same time. And if they start to focus you instead of the support, that's when you start to kite backwards. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So this forces the enemy AD carry to do one of three things. They either have to run away, okay? They have to go for the all in on the support, or you make them switch focus to you. Okay, so you just have to be aware of exactly what's happening when it's happening. Try and slow your mind down and not just kind of go ham mode where you're just like attacking and not thinking. Try and think, okay, they're focusing my support, so I'll focus their AD carry. Okay, and this is an equation that'll stand in your brain. Like, think of it like a computer algorithm. This will stay in this environment, in this steady state, until a variable changes, right? So if the variable is support is now attacking me and AD carry is now attacking me, then I have to react how, okay? So have I chunked down the AD carry enough to where I can kill him? Well, I don't have to retreat. I can just continue to go all in because now my support's going to help me. Or I haven't chunked him enough. He's only half health. If they both focus me, I'll die. Then you just start walking backwards while you auto attack. One auto attack, walk backwards. It's called kiting. One auto attack, walk backwards. One auto attack, walk backwards. Right? So that's just basic kiting. So just kite them backwards as soon as you're done. So as soon as you're done, as soon as you figure out that this is not an all-inable situation, it's not a winnable situation, it's just let me chunk down their ADC and then retreat out. And so what you want to do is, it's called kind of a engage in an analysis, right? So you want to ask yourself, what summoner spells do they have up? All right, does the support still have his exhaust? Does AD carry still have heal? What cooldowns have they used? Has Morgana used her binding already? That's on a, I think, 10-second cooldown, level 1. Can they turn on me? Where's the jungler? Can the jungler come and kill us all? So if you're confident you have all of those things in the checklist checked off, then you can engage in the all-in. If you're not confident, then you shouldn't. But what I'm trying to tell you is get in the habit of thinking about those things, okay? And it seems like a lot right now, but it's really something that you get kind of second nature. Just like looking at the mini-map, or you hear a ping on the mini-map, you look down at it. Some of these things are just kind of reflex, right? Hitting the tab button to check CS. Doing that every 10 to 15 seconds is probably too much, but some people do it, and it's just a force of habit, right? At first it might be something difficult, but the more times you do it, the more repetitive you get with it, the easier it becomes. So start to constantly ask yourself in the laning phase, and that's why people time things like, okay, Callista used Flash, Blitzcrank used Exhaust. You have a small window now that that stuff's down, and you can take advantage of it if you want to. So it's just important to know. and always have that in your brain. Like, okay, there's no summoners on the bot lane. We should be more likely, or we should be looking for opportunities to all in him here, because we know that they can't escape them if they do. Like, say you're playing against the Jhin, right, and they've used flash in the last 2-3 minutes. You know he's got literally no escapes now. If you can just have them freeze the lane right here, call your jungler out to gank, it's a free kill every single time. So just think in those terms and try and get into that habit. Okay, does that make sense? Do you have any questions so far?
That makes sense.
Okay. Is that something like you feel like you can implement into your game going forward?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, just, want to make sure that it's not, too much to think about at all times. And if it is, just pick one thing until you get really good at it, right? Like, don't think about retaliation trading until you've mastered trading stance, right? Like, if a fight starts breaking out and you just straight up abandon your support every single time, like, I mean, it would kind of be a dick move, but at the same time, I wouldn't blame you, because, like, don't put too much on your plate at once. Just think about one thing at a time. So first things first, that trading stance should always be your number one. Mastery, okay? And once you get super comfortable with that, next step is to start working on your retaliation trades and knowing when to go in and do damage, who to do damage to, and then when to retreat out. And these are all very formulaic, so you should know, it should be pretty easy to tell whether you should have or should not have gone in for the exchange and for the trade. And sometimes literally just running away and just saying, sorry, support, like you just walked into death, is the right option. As bad as and as much flame as you might get. Like, if that jungler comes down and your support's standing right here, that support is dead, leave her for dead and save yourself, because there's no point in giving them a double kill when they just, they got their single kill, let them have it, okay? So let's talk now about lane control, okay? Now this is, and I'm kind of getting a little long-winded. Do you have to be somewhere at 9 o'clock or anything, or?
Nah.
Okay. So I'll just go through it all. We might go over some, but I just want to make sure I get to it all for you. So the third thing I want to talk about is lane control. So using the trading stance, what we talked about, and the retaliation trade should create an environment where the enemy laner can't freely move forward to get CS, right? So if he steps forward to get one of your CS, he should be afraid that he's going to take a shot in the face, because you're already ready to pounce on him. And that's what the environment that we want to create with trading and retaliation trades. So there's kind of two main phases of lane control. First is the trade and push phase. What that is, and by the way, all of these things that I'm talking about is it's on YouTube in a lesson called, it's an Australian YouTuber called, what was it, Leaguecraft 101. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. I'll link it to you after this lesson. But he's got a lot of really great videos breaking all of this down. But anyway, the trade and push phase is the first phase of lane control. Basically, it's getting the favorable trades while you're pushing the lane. So your default behavior should be auto-attacking minions at full health and last hitting, right? So what that creates is you're killing their minions faster than they're killing your minions. So what does that allow you to do? Allows you to hit level 2 faster. And what it also creates is a push to his turret. Okay, so the push to his turret is not necessarily a good thing, but it's kind of a byproduct of auto-attacking their creeps as fast as humanly possible so that you can get to that level 2 before he does. So during the auto-attacking phase, while you're just attacking the shit out of his creeps, you also want to look for opportunities to apply the trading stance. Okay, so you want to do both at the same time. And this is something that's really difficult to do right away. And I can't stress that enough. It's something that you have to learn how to do and consciously think about. Okay, and it's going to fuck you up because it's like once you're focused on this, there will be a jungler like walking out of the brush and you're going to not have any idea that's happening because you're just so focused on this. That's happened to me like 10,000 times while I was learning how to do this. I was just tunneling in on the creep and the AD carry because I wanted to make sure I was perfectly last hitting and perfectly applying the trading stance. And yeah, you might die a few times to ganks that way or not notice that like their support has like looped around and now he's about to kind of screw you in the butt. It's just like, you know, the more times and the more repetition that you do it, the easier it becomes and the more second nature it is. And once that becomes second nature, you'll find yourself in platinum. And it's just as it's as easy as that. Is if you're a perfect last hitting and trading stance player, you'll be in platinum just off of that. I promise you. So look for opportunities to do that, and also to use your abilities to harass. So I'm seeing that these two creeps, this range creep and this melee creep, are both low, and I'm playing Caitlyn, and their AD carry standing here. I'll look for an opportunity for a Piltover right through those two creeps. I'll get both of those creeps and do some damage to their AD carry. And same with a Lucian Q, right? So anything you can use to not only get CS, but also to harass at the same time. That's going to be called kind of your trade and push phase. Once you have your lane under control, meaning you've got once you've got your lane under control, meaning you're up in CS, you've backed and come back with a BF sword, while your laner's gone back and come back with like a pickaxe. You've got lane priority, which means that you are kind of in control of this lane. That's when you stop pushing, and you need to press your lead as hard as possible, because more likely, even if you are 0-0 and they're 0-0, say you've got, you know, and then we're like 6 minutes in and you've got like 35 CS and they've got like 20 CS, this is a massive lead, okay? And you'll be able to get BF, right? BF, and they'll have pickaxe, and you're going to have a massive advantage when you guys both go back and come back to lane. So what you want to do is make sure that by 10 minutes you have 80 CS and he's only got 50 CS. So that gap has grown, and he's been starved out. So the way we do this is by zoning the enemy. Okay, so we come back with our BF, they come back with pickaxe. What we want to do is try and... Okay, we don't need... What we're going to do is open... Okay, we're going to open a new one. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and freeze the wave in the most favorable position possible, and that's going to be right here, just outside of tower range. Okay, so this is our creep wave, this is their creep wave, this is your support, this is you, this is my support, this is me. So when you're stronger than your lane opponent, you can all in them, and there's nothing they can do about it. If they don't understand that, you can just go ahead and do it and get a double kill, right? If they do understand it, as soon as you start to walk forward, they're going to start to walk backwards, okay? And I'm sure you've been in these situations before where you're way ahead and they know it. So as soon as you walk forward, they walk backwards, and what that can create is a zoning opportunity where you move from here with your support to here. So now you and your support are standing behind their range creeps, forcing them to stand closer to their tower, okay? This is called just your basic zone, okay? And when the zone is created, it means that you and your lane partner are behind their range creeps. So not only are they not getting any gold or CS, they're not getting any XP either. Okay, and this is a very devastating tactic that's used in every single lane and every single elo. So I think this is something that you definitely want to keep in mind, and this will press your lead because they're totally screwed in this situation unless a jungler comes to help them. And even if they do, they're so weak it's not going to matter. They're not getting extra level. They're not getting any gold. You're well on your way to widening that gap that you've created for yourself. So the zone is number one. Okay. So what do you have to be worried about when you're in the situation is getting ganked. Okay. So just make sure that you're well warded. All right. Pink ward in the try, yellow ward here, yellow ward in front of dragon, and you should be pretty set. If you've got a lot of lane priority and you've got them up against their tower, then you want to have a pink ward behind you in one of the brushes. Typically, if you have it back here, and this is kind of an advanced tactic, you probably don't really even need to know this because your junglers will never take advantage, but if you've got a pink ward in this brush and you've got them pushed up to tower, your jungler can path through your own brushes completely undetected. So when the wave bounces back to the middle, he can just come in and just dumpster everyone. So anyway, moving back to our point, the zoning tactic's great. You just got to worry about ganks, so just be well warded. Number two is the slow push. So say you don't create the situation where it's too dangerous to zone. It's too dangerous to stand out here. You can't do that reliably. You don't have that much of a lead yet. The jungler is somewhere on their side. Best case scenario, or the next thing you can do is take brush priority and last hit and continue the trading stance, but just slow push it, okay? So a slow push, which is the next option, right? Zone's number one, slow push is number two. All you're doing there is last hitting minions. Like before we said, the first phase or the first option of the first phase was the trade and push, where you're attacking their minions at full health down to nothing. Now you're just last hitting, okay? And what that creates is a slow push because you're last hitting their minions while they're trying to last hit, but you're zoning them off as best you can, and that's creating more aggression to their minions in total, cumulatively, than they're doing to yours because they have to worry about you, and so they're kind of backing up, missing every one-off creep, etc., and what that creates is just a very slow push. So this will be, say wave 3. This will be like wave 4. This is where wave 4 crashes. This will be wave 5. And then finally wave 6 gets to pretty much their tower. So that's called the slow push. Whereas if you're attacking as fast as possible, this would be, say, wave 3. This will be wave 4. And then wave 5 will crash into their tower. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So just last hit to whittle them down. And once you get the slow push going and you've got wave after wave after wave after wave and finally you get to their tower, what's going to happen is you're going to have a massive creep wave and they're just going to have that standard 6-wave creep wave that they have, and you might have 12 or 13. So an option can be, as soon as the creep wave gets to the tower, you just shove it hard into the tower and call your jungler for a tower dive. Now that's kind of risky because, again, at bronze they're not going to know exactly how to execute a tower dive properly, so I wouldn't typically suggest that. But one thing I will say is that when you get the creep wave to here, then you're kind of in your own little danger zone where like a gank from mid lane and the jungle is possible, plus like maybe a TP teleport, which is why a pink ward behind you is good because you can see it coming. But You don't want to get gangbanged. So as soon as you get it here, this is the worst place possible to have a freeze. So what you want to do is as soon as it gets here, then you go back to hard shoving, right? You stop the slow push, you go back to hard shoving, and you shove it so that the wave hits the tower. It crashes into the tower starts aggroing the entire wave, and then you can either harass them under tower if you're safe with wards, or if you don't have any wards, you can simply back into the middle of the wave, wait for them to kill all the minions, and then the wave will reset back to about here. Okay, it won't reset to the middle. It'll reset a little bit onto his side, but it'll be a lot safer than it was over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just wave management, okay, in the laning phase. So that's called the reset and freeze. Okay, so you want to freeze it in a favorable situation. So here is perfect if possible. But if that's not possible and you start to push it a little bit, no big deal. Try and get a slow push. And as soon as you get past the river, then it's the reset and freeze. So you reset by crashing it into the tower. Then you get it back to the middle-ish. And then it's a rinse and repeat process over and over and over. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the laning phase broken down, and there's really not a whole lot more to it. Okay, there's a lot of nuances, but for what I want you to kind of take with you going forward, that's just the gist of laning phase. Do you have any questions for me up until this point?
No.
All right, buddy. We're gonna move on then. We're gonna move on to team fighting. I want to get it out there for you before we end the lesson, but. So in a team fight, and we're going to get out of Summoner's Rift here, we're just going to go into a new one. In a team fight, typically, let's zoom in a little bit. There's 5 general phases of a team fight, okay? Number 1, direct initiation. Okay. Number 2, follow up, initiation. Number 3, hit tanks phase. Phase 4, kill backline. And phase 5 is cleanup. So this is how team fights work, okay, at all levels of the game. Okay, you've got a direct initiator, you've got a follow-up initiator. As an AD carry, you've got to hit the tanks front to back. Once you have an opportune moment, you can kill the back line, and then once everybody's low, then you can all in, blow your summoners, flash in, and clean up. Okay, so let's break each point down one by one. Okay, direct initiation. Okay. So it can be any number of things. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a Moo band into 5-man ult. It can be as simple as a Rek'Sai knockup, okay? Rek'Sai dives in, knocks one person up, and they all start to focus Rek'Sai 5-on-1. That is a direct initiation into a team fight, okay? If your team is, relatively close and they can follow up, right? If you're walking out of Fountain and your Rek'Sai is 1v5ing mid lane by himself, which you do see sometimes in Bronze, that is not ideal, and that's not something you can help or do anything about. But in a coordinated team fight, or an ideal situation of a team fight, a direct initiator will start some shit, and hopefully it is your tank doing some form of CC to one or multiple targets. It's not to do damage, but it's used to catch somebody out, okay? And it's not, and I'm gonna write this portion out because it's important. It's not a green light to engage. Okay, so as the AD carry, you are the damage dealer of your team, the main damage dealer, and the one that the other team will be trying to get to. So when the direct initiation gets underway and the Amumu has tossed his band and ulted everybody, that is not your green light to go run at their Vayne, run at their Sivir, whoever the hell their backline damage dealers are, and attack them like crazy. This is not the time to do that, okay? If you go in too early, you will get blown up too early, okay? So what this creates in the enemy team is fight or flight, okay? They have a choice. Do they want to let this engage stand, or do they want to battle this one out, okay? And you have to kind of react accordingly. What do I do in each situation, okay? Can we win this team fight, let's chase them down. Otherwise, if they just disengage and Janna ult or whatever, there's nothing you can do. You just run away and reset, go take some kind of objectives, go farm up, do whatever you need to do. But if they choose to fight, then the follow-up initiation begins, okay? So a follow-up initiation is someone like Aurelia, Gnar, Rek'Sai, Gragas, AoE supports like Braum, Annie, using Tibbers. They're your follow-up initiators, okay? There's the initial direct initiation, then a follow-up initiator who goes in and draws all of the CC, okay? So draws CC from carries, okay? So let's make this 10 as well. So you draw CC from carries. You're going to pressure the back line. Okay. I want to mention that this is difficult to time well. So this is something you're not going to have to worry about as an AD carry. The first two phases are done by your teammates. If these two aren't done in the way that you're comfortable with, there is no reason for you to suicide into a fight. If you can start to recognize situations where your teammates are pretty much throwing a team fight, it is not your job to go into suicide. Don't feel bad about just saying, screw this, I am not dying for you morons, I'm out of here. Just walk away. But if they do engage correctly, and if by accident somehow it does happen in an ideal situation, then you can move on to phase 3, which is the kind of hit tanks phase. So I'm going to just want to put in conjunction with number 3, which is hit tanks, right? And this is pretty basic. After you see Ari use her charm, you see maybe Ashe use her ult on one of the direct initiators or follow-up initiators, then that's kind of your green light to go in. Okay, so what you want to do is after some of these cooldowns are used, especially from the tanks on the front line, Sion uses his ult or a couple of his QE combo, you can force out any ability you want by kiting, but once his cooldowns are used, you want to go from the front line to the back line. So all the while that your direct initiation and your follow-up initiation is happening, you want to be focusing on what's closest to you. Okay, and usually that's going to be the tanks. So you just want to be attacking the tanks and just DPSing as often as possible. So be in range of only one champ at a time. Ever. So this is a very, very, very important point. You're never, ever allowed to, in League of Legends, never allow yourself to ever say things like, my team doesn't peel for me. I keep getting one-shotted by the Victor, okay? If you're even in range for a Victor laser, you've made a mistake, okay? Victor shouldn't even be able to come near you without getting dumpstered by your team, which, you know what I mean? So like if Victor is in range to laser you, you were too far forward, you needed to be further back, okay? And if he's walking up to you to try and get into that range, he needs to go through your tank line, through your front line, And by doing that, he's just asking to be murdered. So don't ever complain about people not peeling for you, because you have control of where you stand and your spacing in this game. So front to back, hit those tanks while the initiation's occurring, and you just want to lower his health bar as far as you can until you see all of the... So hit tanks until you see all major cooldowns blown on their carries. So as soon as you see all of the carries on the other team blow while on the people trying to kill them, which is your front line, that's your green light to go in and hit phase 4, kill the back line. Okay? So once those cooldowns are gone, then you're free to go in and use your cooldowns, burst people down, flash in. It's the hardest. This is the hardest aspect of League of Legends in a team fight, is to know when phase 4 begins and you can go in to kill the back line. Why? Because there's 5 champions on each side, 4 abilities each. It's really, really hard in the heat of the moment to keep track of each and every ability and cooldown. But I've learned if you just kind of focus on the major ones that will kill you, like an Assault, like a Victor Laser, like an RA Charm, as soon as you see those, you just keep a lookout for those alone, and you should be okay. And it should be more manageable in a team fight, right? Okay, I just saw RA Charm our Aurelia. I just saw Ash ult our Gnar. There aren't very many hard CCs left for me as a Lucian, so I know this is my green light to all in the back line and just walk right past their front line and go for that kill, because there's nothing left for them to kill you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the cleanup is pretty self-explanatory. Just use flash. Everyone's going to be low at this point. Just go for the kills as hard as possible. Blow every summoner. Do everything you can do. So it is a very methodical approach. It's very difficult, but you need to recognize and assess the situation at each point. Okay? Direct initiation requires the fight or flight. Okay? Did that direct initiation engage a team fight, or does it disengage the team fight from the enemy team's perspective? Try and figure it out and don't force anything. You're the AD carry. You're just going to be a reactionary tool in the back, because if you step forward, you'll get blown up. Next is the follow-up initiation. Wait until your secondary tank, your secondary initiator goes in and starts to really blow the cooldowns of the carries. And as soon as the cooldowns are blown, you kill the back line, right? And all the while you're hitting the tanks, hitting the front line and trying to kind of front to back way into the fight. If you can kill that tank before the carries on your team blow their cooldowns, or even better yet, as soon as they blow their cooldowns, you kill their front line, the team fight's over, you've won, and you can just all in hardcore. So it's a very a dynamic situation that's always changing, and that's what makes League fun and difficult all at the same time, is you have to be aware at all times and have your eyes open. So I think that's kind of the very broad overview, and I think it becomes a little bit easier once you kind of start to consciously look for this in your games, or even when you're watching people stream, or you're watching VOD reviews of pros or LCS or whatever you want to do. Even Jat, if you see, I don't know if you watch LCS, but he's got this thing that's a team fight breakdown, and he breaks down a team fight from each week of LCS, and does it exact. If you look at it, he kind of follows this exact step-by-step process of how did this team fight break down, how did it start, who started it and why, where were the cooldowns during that fight, and why did it go in one team's favor or another. It's actually fascinating, so I encourage you to look at that too. Do you have any questions about anything we've talked about today?
No.
Okay. I know you've been a quiet one today. I totally understand. I mean, it's a lot to kind of take in. Um, Again, the number one thing I want you to focus on for the next couple weeks while you play is, again, number one, CS. Okay, even when you're playing normal games, focus on that CS. Number two is focus on playing ranked over CS, and then number 3 is focus your champion pool a little bit better into something like this as you play. Okay, those are kind of like the things I actively want you to focus on. And once you're comfortable with that, and once you're comfortable with your last hitting, then incorporate the trading stance, and then once you're done with that, incorporate the retaliation trades. I've given you kind of a lot to think about and work on. So if you want to just kind of work on them over the next couple weeks, all through preseason, into the beginning of next season, whatever you want to do, feel free to ask me any questions you want on Skype. I'm pretty much on Skype all the time. So I'll be here, and if you want to like schedule another lesson in like a month or two, if you feel like you've progressed enough to where we can take it to the next level, we can do that. All right?
All right.
All right, buddy. Well, I mean, I know you don't have any questions now, but I'm sure you'll have some in the future. Just feel free to just message me on Reddit on Skype, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
All right.
All right, buddy. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, later.
Later, dude.